In Miami, Captain Jackie Veles from the tactical narcotics team is sitting in her car, on the phone with a frightened informant. The woman is convinced that someone has been watching her and her home. Jackie tells her that she is the only cop she can trust and that she will protect her. As Jackie steps out of her car and proceeds on foot, a gunshot suddenly rings out. She is hit but not killed instantly. Struggling to stay conscious, Jackie manages to type a short message on her phone and throws it into the water. Before help can arrive, men in ski masks step forward and finishes her. Following Jackie's murder, her team, detectives Numa, Mike, and Lolo, along with Sergeant J.D. Byrne, are brought in by the FBI for questioning. At the same time, Police Chief Tom meets with Lieutenant Dne, Jackie's second-in-command, who has just been promoted after her death. When Tom asks what Jackie had been chasing before she was killed, Dne answers, money. A lot of it. He adds that he is angry the FBI doesn't seem to be taking her murder seriously. Tom sighs, admitting the division is falling apart, and reveals that the federal authorities want the entire narcotics unit shut down. In another interview room, FBI agent Del Byrne, who also happens to be JD's brother, questions Numa. He asks if she and Jackie were close and whether her death has affected her. Numa says they were close and corrects him pointedly. It wasn't a death, it was a murder. Del then presses the whole team, pointing out that their job constantly involves seizing drugs and large amounts of cash. He asks whether that kind of money ever creates temptation or conflict. The detectives all deny it. When Del interviews Sergeant JD demands to know why the FBI is really there, asking when the last time was that they caught a cop killer in a conference room. Del then asks JD about his relationship with Jackie, whether they were together. This gets him angry, revealing that JD and Jackie were in love. Del also brings up the fact that Jackie was carrying a second gun that belonged to JD when she was killed. JD loses it and attacks Del, starting a brawl. Later, Dane meets JD in the bathroom. JD says that if the FBI were here after all this time and still looking at them, it means they have no idea who killed Jackie. Neither of them believes the FBI will find her killer. Dane admits he hates being a cop now, waking up every night wondering how much time has gone and how little is left. JD says if he were running the investigation, he would actively test suspects, set traps, and get reactions from people, because nobody here is doing basic police work. He leaves, quoting something Jackie always used to say, "Just live to see another surprise." The team relaxes in their personal space by the parking lot and jokes around, mocking Del behind his back. The laughter stops when Numa asks why everyone keeps talking about money when they are narcotics cops. Mike mentions rumors about stash house robberies. Lolo asks what he means, and JD explains that stash houses are where drug cartels store their cash, and that there has been talk of a crew made up of dirty cops and federal agents stealing from them. Nearby, Dane reads a message on his phone about a stash house, then pauses and glances down at a photo of his son. Outside in the parking lot, a DEA armored vehicle pulls in. DEA agents Nix and Deo step out and greet the team. Just then, Dane steps outside and greets the DEA agents before turning to his team. He tells them a Crimestoppers tip has just come in. A large amount of money is reportedly hidden inside a house in Halia. Lolo mentions their shift is nearly over and asks if this means overtime. Dane shakes his head, saying there is no overtime due to budget cuts, but that he is going regardless. He tells Lolo to bring Wilbur, the cash-sniffing dog. Numa asks how much money they are talking about. Dane says around $250,000. Mike asks if they should notify the Halia Police Department. Dane says no, explaining that the department there is a mess right now. Mike presses again and asks how much they expect to recover. Dane replies about $150,000. The team rolls out to the location, a quiet cul-de-sac lined with modest homes. As soon as they approach the house, Wilbur starts acting strangely and urinates near the front door. Lo says she has never seen Wilbur react like this and asks how much cash they are really dealing with. Dane says about $75,000. Lolo says that makes no sense. Wilbur would never react that strongly for such a small amount. Dane gets the homeowner's attention and tells her they received a tip about drugs being stored in the house. JD asks for her name. She introduces herself as Desi. Dane asks if anyone else is inside. Desi says she is alone. He asks for permission to search the house. She asks if they have a warrant. Dane admits they do not, but says they have a consent to search form. They want to search for drugs, not money. And if she has nothing to hide, she can simply sign it. After a moment of hesitation, Desi signs. Lo removes Wilbur's leash. The dog immediately starts barking at the ceiling. Dane asks what is in the attic. Desi says she has never been up there and insists there are no drugs. JD corrects her, saying the dog alerts on money, not narcotics. Desi's expression shifts instantly. Dane and JD head up into the attic. JD notices how clean it is compared to the rest of the house and asks Desi why. She repeats that she has never been up there and says the home used to belong to her grandmother. JD notices a thin wire sticking out from the wall and pulls it, causing a hidden panel behind a statue to slide open. Inside, they find several large drums. Dane orders the team to start removing the containers while he and JD question Desi. Dane asks how long she has lived in the house. She says 2 months. She explains that her grandmother recently passed away and that she took care of her on her own for years. The house is now in probate, and her sister is contesting the will, even though she never helped care for their grandmother. JD asks if she knew there was money in the house. Desi denies knowing anything. JD tells her that whether she knew or not, she is now in possession of illegal cash and is is implicated. She argues that the house is still in probate and not officially hers. Desi notices the tattoos on Dane's hands and asks what they mean. He explains that the first one says, "Are we the good guys?" and the other means we are and always will be. She asks if he needs validation for that. Studying him carefully, Mike calls them up from the attic. They open one of the drums and find far more money than expected. Dane counts one container and estimates the rest. It is over $20 million. Everyone's breath stops. JD orders everyone back downstairs. But before they leave, Dane asks the team to hand over their phones. Numa, shocked, asks if he doesn't trust them. Dane says money makes people act crazy. He collects everyone's phones, including Desi's. JD offers his as well. But Dane refuses, asking JD instead to help him think things through. JD is clearly uncomfortable. He asks how much the tip said the stash would be. Dane replies, 30,000. JD quietly says they are in trouble. Dane orders Mike and Numa to pull the remaining containers from the wall and begin counting. JD objects, saying they need to move the money immediately. Dane insists that protocol requires counting it on site. If their count is off by even $1, other authorities will come after them. JD snaps back that the rules do not apply to this much cash. Dane refuses to budge. JD suggests calling the chief. Dane says he does not trust anyone right now. JD then reveals that Jackie had told him about a huge rip just like this shortly before she was killed. A lot of money, and he thinks this is it. Lolo asks if she can call her daughters to say goodnight. Dane refuses. JD suggests at least calling his brother or Nix. Dane shuts that down too. JD loses his temper and calls Dane a real problem. Hearing the argument, Desi warns them they are making a terrible mistake. She tells them to take whatever money they want and leave before everything turns into a disaster. Just then, Mike rushes down from the attic, saying a police cruiser just turned onto the street. Dane and JD step outside and identify themselves as narcotics officers. One of the local cops says they were never notified about a raid. JD brushes him off, saying patrol officers do not need to be included. The officer tells him to go to hell and says he is calling his superiors. As the cruiser pulls away, JD notices the officer riding shotgun and recognizes him, but the cop pretends not to know him. JD tells Dane that the man was part of the Violent Criminal Apprehension Team, a unit shut down for widespread criminal corruption, and suspects his partner was too, suggesting they may have been reassigned. When Dane asks if JD thinks they knew about the stash, JD shrugs. They both decide to grab their vests, extra weapons, and spare magazines just in case. Back inside, Daisy is handcuffed to a chair while Lolo, Numa, and Mike move the cash containers into the garage. As they work, Mike says quietly that he does not like how Dane is running the operation, especially not calling it in, and that Jackie never would have handled it this way. Numa reminds him that Dane is in charge and they need to stick together. Dane and JD enter the garage and order everyone to put on their vests. Dane apologizes to Lolo for not letting her make a call. Dane tells Mike to go outside and keep watch. He then grabs a stack of cash and gives instructions to Lolo and Numa. If a bundle is labeled $250, leave it untouched. If there is no label, count it. He laughs and adds it would be a lot easier to just steal the money. The comment strikes JD as odd. Outside, Mike secretly sends a text to the chief using a burner phone saying they have hit a jackpot and nobody is calling command. Things might get dirty. Inside, Desi admits that ever since she moved into the house, she has been receiving calls telling her to leave for a few hours at a time. She does not know who is calling. Dane asks what she meant earlier when she told them to take the money and leave. Desi says that was exactly what she was told to say if the police ever showed up. She notices a photo of a young boy and asks Dane about it. He says it is his son. While reviewing her file, Dane realizes Desi is a confidential informant. Her statements were sealed for her protection. Daisy explains that her ex-boyfriend stole drugs and cash, and that she worked with the police to stay safe. Dane and JD press her, accusing her of knowingly allowing cartel money to be stored in the house and profiting from it. Suddenly, an old rotary phone starts ringing. Daisy panics and begs them not to answer it, but JD picks up anyway. A distorted voice warns that if they do not leave within 30 minutes with $150,000, everyone will die. JD hangs up and looks at Dane. They have half an hour before someone shows up. JD pulls Dane aside and confronts him, asking why he lied about the tip, why he said the stash was $300,000 when the caller just said $150,000. He demands to know what is really going on. Dane brushes him off. JD says Dane has not been acting like himself since they arrived and that he has known him long enough to see that. He asks to see the Crimestoppers tip, admitting he no longer trusts him. Dane says he does not have it on him. JD tells him to call the chief or he will. In the garage, the women continue counting. Lolo holds up one banded stack and tells Numa that even just that much could change her life forever. She reminds Numa that she only makes $80,000 a year after taxes, and for that she gets shot at, spat on, punched, and kicked. Meanwhile, JD steps outside and calls Nix from the DEA. He explains the tip and reveals there is far more money than expected. He shares his concern that Dane still has not reported it. Nix raises a disturbing possibility. What if this stash house is the same one Jackie was working on, and Dane found out about it? He says Dane was Jackie's second in command and may have discovered it before she could act. Nix even even suggests Dane could have killed Jackie to steal the money. JD argues back, defending his friend. But Nix reminds him that Dane lost his son to cancer, his marriage has collapsed, and he has nothing left to lose. JD swears and says he will call his brother, but Nix tells him not to involve the feds. He asks for JD's location and promises he will be there in 10 minutes. Back inside the garage, Dane quietly tells Lolo and Numa that something has to change because he is fed up with how little he earns. Outside, Mike notices that the lights in all the surrounding houses along the cul-de-sac are flickering on simultaneously. None of the homes appear to be occupied. Then JD spots a single porch light blinking in a pattern. He realizes it is Morse code. The message reads, "Pigs." He tells Mike to warn Dane while he goes to investigate alone. At the same time, Mike receives a message from the chief. Inside, Dane contacts the chief himself in front of Desi, reporting the stash house location and claiming the money is only about $150,000, saying they are counting it and will leave on their own. Desi, left wondering what to do, quietly pulls Mike aside and tells him that Dane and the two women are planning to steal the money. She says she overheard them in the garage and that Dane lied to his superior about the amount. She tells Mike he is the only one she trusts. Dane comes back and Mike tells him that JD went to investigate the house with the blinking porch light. They head out together to find him. Shortly after they leave, the phone rings again. Numa answers. The same distorted voice warns that people will start dying in 10 minutes outside. As Dane and Mike walk toward the house, Dane suddenly asks Mike point blank if he is a snitch. Mike laughs it off. Dane sends him back to the house while he checks the place himself. As soon as Dane turns his back, Mike makes a quiet call, warning someone that Dane is about to steal the cash and they need to move now. Meanwhile, JD is searching the house with a blinking light when he receives a message from Nix confirming that no Crimestoppers tip was ever called in. Before he can process this, someone steps up behind him and presses a gun to the back of his head. Back at the stash house, Mike returns to Desi and assures her that nothing bad is going to happen. Help is on the way. He tries to get into the garage but finds it closed. Inside, Numa and Lolo are packing the cash. Dane enters the garage. Numa tells him about the 10-minute warning call. Mike asks where JD is. Dane says they got separated. Then, suddenly the lights cut out. Gunfire erupts. Bullets rip through the darkness. In the chaos, Lolo is hit. Dane tells Numa to stay with her while he and Mike go after the masked attackers. Inside, Numa tends to Lolo's wound and frees Desi from the cuffs. Outside, Dane and Mike chase the shooters. Dane manages to kill one of them, but the other two escape. Then a different man appears before them. JD arrives and stops Dane from shooting, explaining the man was the one operating the porch light as a cartel lookout. His crew did not attack the house. Someone else did. The man calls his boss and hands the phone to Dane. The cartel boss confirms that none of his people were behind the shooting and that they have no interest in the money. After a police officer was killed, they want no more attention. He makes it clear they had nothing to do with Jackie's murder either. Her death has already hurt their business enough. Everyone returns to the garage. Dane tells the team the cartel is walking away and had nothing to do with the ambush. Lolo suggests they keep the Crimestoppers reward and divide the rest. But Numa reminds her that Dane already contacted the chief. JD asks when. Dane says earlier about the stash. Then JD drops the truth in front of everyone. There was never a Crimestoppers tip. Dane made the whole thing up. He reminds the team that Dane was Jackie's second in command. So if Jackie knew about this stash house, Dane knew too. Dane fires back, accusing JD of setting the whole thing up. He says JD recognized the former VCAT officer earlier in the evening and then vanished for nearly 30 minutes before returning with an armed cartel member. JD counters with a chilling detail. The cartel boss said on the call that Jackie was killed by someone on her own team. He stares straight at Dane and calls him a cop killer. The two of them start throwing punches. Mike and Numa rush in to pull them apart. Dane tells Numa and Lolo to finish the count so they can leave. He orders Mike to go keep watch over Desi. Outside, Mike checks his vest and realizes his burner phone is missing. JD calls Nix and urges him to come quickly, telling him Dane has gone off the rails and is about to steal the stash. JD asks if backup is coming. Nix says overtime is dead, but that he is bringing an armored vehicle. He asks how much money is involved. JD says $20 million. Nix says they will be there shortly. Inside, Mike plays the good cop and asks Desi if she has an extra phone, while his eye catches a candle nearby. Numa and Lolo finish packing the cash into black bags. Dane shows them a number and tells them to memorize it without saying it out loud. Just then, fire breaks out in the garage. They rush the bags outside just as the armored truck arrives. Dane looks surprised to see Nix but quickly recovers. He tells Mike to load the money into the truck and orders JD to stay behind with the women. JD shouts that he does not trust Dane. That is why he called Nix. Nix steps between them and orders both men into the vehicle. Inside the armored truck, both JD and Dane draw their weapons and keep them ready. Dane asks where the money is going. Nix says there is a DEA vault near the hospital. JD takes out his phone and sends a text. Nix asks who it is for. JD says the chief to let him know their location and adds that Dane already informed him. Mike says no, he did not. The chief knows about the rip, but not the total amount. Dane snaps at Mike and asks how he would know that. Mike tells Dane to go to hell and then reveals that Desi told him everything, that Dane reported only $150,000 to the chief and planned to split the remaining money with Lolo and Numa. Dane smirks. Desi heard exactly what he wanted her to hear. In a flashback, we see him signaling the women to play along and declare that they are robbing the rip, loud enough for Desi to overhear. Dane explains that once Desi heard they were stealing the money, she went straight to Mike because she trusted him as the good cop. Dane had already given everyone different numbers, and the number he gave Mike was $150,000. So when the threatening phone call came demanding that no one needed to die for $150,000, there was only one way that figure could have reached the caller, and during Dane and JD's staged fight, JD quietly lifted Mike's burner phone from him. Dane then accuses Mike of calling the local cops, starting the fire, and trying to steal the rip all night long. Mike denies it. Dane then admits that he has been lying to everyone all night, even to JD until very recently. In another flashback, we see Dane pointing a gun at JD before slowly lowering it. Dane explains that there was never a Crimestoppers tip. On the night she was killed, Jackie sent him a message from a burner phone. Dane orchestrated the entire operation as a trap to flush out her killer. Jackie herself had suspected someone inside the unit was corrupt and had planned to use the stash as bait to draw them out, but she was killed before she could. The only way the trap would work was if everyone, including JD, believed Dane was actually going to steal the money. Dane says he had Mike the moment he heard $150,000 on that call. He just needed to find out who Mike was working with. JD turns to Nix and asks where the radios are and who is monitoring them. They are transporting $20 million across Miami with no backup. Nix says he could not get clearance at this hour. JD points out that he told Nix exactly how much money was involved. Nix fires back that JD also told him Dane was dirty. Dane explains he acted dirty specifically to see who would show up to steal the money. JD then accuses Nix outright of being the one who ordered the attack on the house using the VCAT cops. Nix denies it. Mike asks for his burner phone back and dials the last number. A phone inside Nix's vest starts ringing. Nix immediately shoots Mike. The driver raises his weapon, but JD reacts first and kills him. Nix takes both JD and Dane hostage and orders his partner to dump Deo's body in the street. JD mutters under his breath, then looks Nix in the eye and asks, "Did you kill Jackie?" Nix shakes his head, but Mike, bleeding on the floor, forces out the words, "Nix did." Both attackers that night on the street had been Nix, and Mike then JD's phone rings. He puts it on speaker. Dell's voice comes through, saying they have eyes on the armored truck entering the street. It becomes clear that JD had messaged his brother their location earlier. Nix tries to convince JD and Dane that they could all live like royalty with this kind of money. But while Nix is distracted, Mike fires his weapon from the floor. Chaos erupts. Both Mike and Nix grab a bag and flee the truck. JD goes after Nix while Dane chases Mike. Mike runs into the marshes and through the woods. Dane runs him down, catches him off guard, tackles him to the ground, and snaps the handcuffs on. After a wild vehicle chase, JD finally corners Nix beneath an overpass. Nix tears open his bag and finds it is stuffed with old phone books. JD had swapped the cash out beforehand. Nix raises his gun, but JD fires first, killing him. The real money, which had been kept safe with Lolo and Numa the entire time, is turned over to the FBI. The total count comes to $20,658,480, not a single dollar off from the number Dane's team had memorized. Desi is awarded $4 million for her role as a confidential informant. JD embraces his brother Dell and apologizes for the fight the day before. Desi goes to find Dane and says, "You knew I would go to Mike." Dane nods and replies that he trusted she would do the right thing. She looks at the tattoo on his hand. This time Dane explains its full meaning. It was the last question his young son ever asked him before dying of cancer at the age of 10. Later, Dane and JD are at the beach, quietly watching the sunrise and reminiscing about the night. Suddenly, they hear a woman nearby calling out a name, Jackie. It is her dog's name. JD smiles at the sound of it as the sun rises over the water.